I'm John Hanna for CDTV.net, and we have the CEO of McFarlane Toys, Mr. Todd McFarlane. Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us.
You bet. Thanks for having me today.
Now, sir, for the toy industry, can you tell us some more about your company?
I'm a smaller company. I mean, relative to some of the big giants that are out there. So when I started my company, the goal was to do action figures, and never really broaden out from that, but just do that piece of the business as good as I possibly could, and try and see if I could actually even do it better than some of the other people that are doing it. So unlike sort of full service toy companies that have maybe 200, 300 products in a lot of different aisles, I said, look, the action figures are in aisle 8. Our goal is we just, want to be, at least quality-wise, the king of aisle 8, and I'll be content with that living.
Now, with regards to anybody in the comic book world, when you mention Todd McFarlane, they know you already. How did you come up with that kind of appeal?
In the comic book industry, you know what? I mean, I've been very fortunate that some things that artistically seem very obvious to me, that there's a big hunger for it by a lot of people, not only in North America but globally. So when I was collecting comic books, I always sort of gravitated to the ones that sort of were very melodramatic and had a lot of hyper detail. And we're trying to do a couple of things a little bit new with some of the way they were designing the pages. So I just sort of incorporated all that, came out with my style, which is a little bit different than what some of the people had seen out there. I mean, I bounced around a couple of books and then eventually made my big giant mark on Spider-Man. But part of that was I don't think that they had been updating artistically Spider-Man's look. So when I did it, it was a shock to everybody's system, because instead of it being a 5-year upgrade, it was like a 25-year upgrade. And so I was able to then sort of do that when I started the toy company, that everything I do artistically, I go, okay, what exists? What do people like? But how can you just do it a little bit sexier artistically? So, there's been action figures forever, and people have been doing them. I'm just going, I look at them as a fan wanting to buy them, going, I don't get why they don't do this, and why don't they make it look like this, and why don't they put this kind of paint job on it? And when I do those, like I said, I've been fortunate that there's a whole wave of people that have been thinking the exact same thing, going, wow, finally, Todd, you did it. The same thing, the same way we've been thinking about it, we just didn't have the time or energy or skill to be able to sort of bring it to market.
So what other portfolios do you have right now?
I do comic books, I do the toys, working on a couple of video games right now. One's a console game, one's an online video game. I've done directing, TV, animation, dealt with movies and stuff. So if you sort of just throw all that into the bucket of pop culture, I just dealt with pop culture. I've been in every one of those areas within pop culture has some form of art attached to it.
Now, I've seen that you have a lot of new products out here, the Walking Dead franchise. Tell us about that.
Well, it's interesting because, everybody's trying to look for the hot new license, and we're getting a lot of good comments on it, and the TV show did extraordinarily well. I mean, it actually set records, last year when it first came out in its first season. And, they go, oh, how'd you get that license? Well, a small company like mine, it only gets licensed sort of two ways. One, I have to just sort of have an eye and try and get stuff before it gets big, because once it sort of gets big, the people who have more money and have, more executives than me can easily come in and snag them. So I have to sort of get it before anybody knows it's going to be big. And that's a bit of a risk, because, since it's not fully formed, you don't know how it's going to go. But with Walking Dead, coincidentally, you also have the other piece of the small business besides trying to have a keen eye and staying ahead of a curve. You have to have dumb luck. And where the dumb luck comes in is that the creator of Walking Dead, by coincidence, happened to be my partner in my comic book company. So The Walking Dead has been around my life for years and years and years and years and years. And it's usually, Robert, get your script in because your deadlines are getting missed. Come on, what are you doing? And to now everybody, like, Walking Dead's that hot TV show. So when Robert Kirkman, the creator, decided that he wanted to make some toys, it was a bit of a no-brainer for him to go, let me see, my comic book partner is also the guy who makes some of the coolest toys, and he's a toy maker. So that was an easy one. That was, I mean, I wish I had 5 partners that also had hit TV shows, but that's how I was able to grab that one. Okay. And then AMC just fell in after I got Robert. You know, then I went, hey, I've got Robert's piece. I think one company should have both the comic book and the TV components, because I think that they'll be able to stretch this out and make a stronger brand out of it.
Now, with regards to investments, you said that if you had more money, that kind of stuff, you could probably expand some more your empire. What are your plans?
You know, I mean, let's just look at it from a strictly a business point of view. The model that works the best is just selling more of the same thing. So I've had years where I've done, let's say, 20 different brand names, and they all do okay, but because you have to put out the same time and effort and, you know, money to do the research and development of it, and the logistics of all of it, and you know, all the nightmare that goes along with developing anything, I had to multiply it by 20, but I was only making a couple dollars off each one of them. And the answer is, why don't we scale back, like, you know, a lot of big companies have done, and just take 4 or 5 that we know that have been good, that we know have, you know, a 365-day program we can put behind it, which is what the stores want, and just concentrate on that and see if we can just sell more of those and because if we can get more stores, then we're just making more of what we already developed. You get to amortize all those costs, and your profits go way, 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 way up, as you know.
Now, where are you now with regards to global reach?
It depends what it is. The sports stuff is hit and miss, because again, you know, the American sports doesn't really travel globally. I mean, they like their soccer or rugby or whatever happens to be, cricket. You know, there's other sports that are far more sort of followed in other countries than our 4 major sports. So the sports stuff is a bit hit and miss. I mean, obviously, if you got, you know, guys, you know, like Yao Ming that have an international flavor, or somebody like Michael Jordan that, you know, everybody knows globally, then you can do some business with them. But we've historically had way more success on things like, you know, Aliens or Predator or Matrix or, you know, monsters and sort of cool stuff instead of sports items, because those you don't have to translate, right? I mean, cool translate with no effort globally, and monsters, I mean, a creepy monster is a creepy monster in any language. I mean, these zombies that you see over here for Walking Dead, I don't have to explain to them that it's just cool looking monsters. You either like monsters or you don't. That's the end of the explanation. So for us, we try to touch on some of the stuff that we think we can get into other countries a little bit easier. Now, the downside is, because we have a tendency to go after and deal with materials that are a little bit skewed older, there's still a lot of stores, you know, not only here in America but globally, that sort of still like to have sort of the mom-friendly product, which is why in this country our sports figures do so well. It's because, you know, no mom is ever going to walk by and go, oh, that's gross. And so you know, it took us a while to convince them that Halo, although it's a mature video game, there's just a giant following for it. And although it's not a blockbuster movie, you know, tentpole movie during the summer by Hollywood, don't discount that when these games come out, they're not making more money. As a matter of fact, you saw what happened with Halo Reach and with Call of Duty. They actually exceeded what Hollywood does in its first 24 to 72 hours sort of cycle. So they're starting to wake up to that, and they're starting to be a little more open to looking at things even like a cable TV show now, like Walking Dead, where before they would say, I don't want to hear about it. They're now going, I'm not saying I will or I won't, bring in and pitch it to me, which is way more aggressive than they were even a year and a half ago when the economy got tight. As you know, corporations have a tendency to get very conservative, right? And when they get conservative, they go, only take the AAA license and brands and walk away from everything else. But then they lose diversity, and they lose that sort of breakout hit. And so every now and then somebody has a breakout hit, and it's always the guy who actually was in a corner someplace and took a risk on something. So we have a chance now with Walking Dead to actually have a meaningful conversation that before was just a definite no.
Okay. So bottom line, if you have money right now, what would you plan to do with that thing?
Well, it depends on how much money. If I had all the money in the world, I'd just buy all the cool licenses that my competitors have and just do a better version of it, right? So of course I'd like to do Spider-Man, Batman, and Star Wars, and I'd do a cooler version of it than any of those guys are doing right now. But I'm never going to get there, so I'm going to have to. I'm swimming sort of upstream a little bit here, and I'm just going to have to sort of find my little diamonds in the rough and continue to do that, and then hopefully ride those for 3 to 5 years, a decade, and then in that time find another one that will replace it. And next thing you know, we've been doing it for 30 years.
Now, full disclosure, my brother has Spawn Comics.
Okay.
Now, he was asking me about whether or not you're going to have new characters in that thing.
The Spawn comic book, yeah, we're actually, issue 200 just came out, which is only the second independent comic book ever to get to 200. And I've got a new team and a new direction going on that is going into this sort of hyper-realism sort of look and story, which is just getting me ready for that's what's happening with the animation in the second movie that I'm trying to prep for this year. That we've already introduced like 3 or 4 new characters in the first 4 issues, and we'll continue to do it. But the fun part also is that because there's a new person that's in the costume of Spawn, even if you bring back the old characters, there's a new dynamic because it's not the same 2 people that are now having the relationship. You have somebody that might not even know that the bad guy's a bad guy, which is what's happening with one of the key guys, right? I mean, if the new Batman comes along and hasn't done his homework, he might actually think the Joker's okay if he brings him donuts and coffee at the beginning of every day.
Now, last question with regards to sales now. Tell me a product that's always flying off the shelf right now.
Well, the biggest piece of our business is sports. And the reason that sports works for us is on a couple different levels. We were able to convince the store owners to take the sports and not think of it as football, baseball, basketball, hockey for individuals. But if you go to the stores and you see where my product is, you're going to see that if they put like a little tag on it, it just says McFarlane Sports Picks, which basically means all sport. And what it allows me to do is then, in America, those 4 sports all overlap, and there's never a day where one of those sports isn't active. So that unlike a movie or a video game release or a TV show, there's not ebbs and flows on it. It's there every day. And so I go, wow, I can have it. Now, depending upon how the success of the individual players and whether they win awards or whether the team succeed, you then actually have some years where if the Yankees win, I go, wow, there's a lot of Yankees fans, I can sell them. And, you know, a recent example, a couple of weeks ago, the Packers won, they have a pretty decent following, and Aaron Rodgers wins the MVP. Well, of course I'm going to put Aaron Rodgers out at the beginning of next year, and we'll sell a gob of them because there's relevancy to what it was that he did. So for me, making them all the same, the footprint, the packaging is the same size, and the pricing for all 4 sports is the same size, so it becomes stock boy proof. That even if they mix and match the sports and they put it on the peg, it will still be the same size at the same price, and somebody can't then complain that somebody mixed it up. And that's how I've been able to sort of keep that shelf space going 365 days out of the year.
Any other things you might want to say about investing in today's toy companies?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the thing that's going to start helping people is to look at some of the new waves of technology. And what technology does is a couple things. On the logistics side, the business side, it allows you to communicate better and just basically hopefully figure out where your efficiencies are and be able to maybe do some things maybe at 20% faster. On an artistic side, there's also technology that allows you to think about doing things creatively that you might not have been able to do in the past, or at least help you get there on a cost-efficient way that you might not have been able to do in the past. So the technology, I mean, I've seen, you know, it's a thing that's holding back, I think, some of the smaller companies that are in this room, that they haven't invested as much into their infrastructure as they have into their art. And as much as, I mean, I'm an artist first and foremost, as much as I would like to have every penny go into the art, I also know that half the success is actually getting the product to the shelf so the consumer can see it. You could have the best art in the world, but if nobody knows it exists, you got nothing. So there's a simpatico that has to go there, where you have to sort of take sort of the dull spending and the sexy spending and put it together so that you can actually get your product out there and hopefully have people respond to it and be able to get it back out the marketplace real quick.
That's Todd McFarlane, the very passionate CEO of McFarlane Toys. And I'm John Hanna for CDTV.net.